we have a bit of time now for Q&A. There's a couple in the box that I'll ask specifically, but I kind of am really interested in hearing some of your thoughts over some themes that I kind of saw run through a lot of this, a lot about uh, kind of like bodily autonomy, sexual autonomy, reproductive autonomy, and some questions refer to that. And I'd also like to return to that initial point that I believe Jack brought up and then Ramona carried forward, which was about this kind of narrative of sacrifice, because that also seems something that is coursing through all of these talks today. So first, I think there were a couple questions um, for Paulina, because it was a bit about sexual and reproductive rights. So maybe I'll just ask like kind of both of these. Well, we can do them separately. Nicole asked, "What about spay and neuter?" So what do we think about spay and neuter in the context of respecting sexual and reproductive rights for animals?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a difference between just assuming without consulting animals that it's a decision we make on their behalf versus a decision that is made as a result of paying attention to their agency and their state of overall health, whether you're analyzing the health of a feral cat colony or street dogs or whoever would be in need of reproductive assistance and assessing with it whether it fits into their affirming their right to health. So, yeah, I think I would just think of it in the reverse if it supports their right to health.
And then I guess related to that, but this can be for you. It was kind of a little bit from what Nathan was speaking about as well. But Riley asks, how would we approach the environmental impact of letting domesticated animals reproduce unhindered, right? So if we have, say, domesticated animals or formerly domesticated animals, but no more domestication, what kind of constraints would we put upon them? So this is, I guess, Paulina and Nathan, and then I can open that up to Ramona and Jack if you have any thoughts as well.
Yeah, so ecological and social sustainability of domesticated animal population sizes is, for me, something that has to be factored in after rights. Like currently, the way that animal ethicists or animal rights theorists talk about animal sexuality and reproduction is purely as a population issue without like considering animal agency. So for me, the sustainability question has to come after we have some idea of rights, and then our responsibilities towards them would have to uh, be shaped by some concept of sustainability as well, but not in a way that necessarily violates their rights unless being unsustainable
Mm,
violates more rights, right? So it's not necessarily like a complete hands-off or neglectful approach.
yeah. Nathan, do you have some thoughts as well?
Yeah. So first, this, so wild animal populations were stable and sustainable before domestication. So they certainly can exist without any human influence over that, and they control themselves just fine. That to me has always been the obvious point when people are like, where all the farm animals are going to go. They can be wild. Now, you can't just turn them all loose. I get that Paulina was saying that. Yes, I understand that. But so there certainly could be some nuance in like the adjustment mechanism. But this is where I see sanctuaries coming in, and I think sanctuary workers, particularly the good ones, I don't know a lot about sanctuaries. I know there are better and worse models, but certainly the better sanctuaries have thought about this and deal with this, and I would generally defer to them. But I am not an expert on that topic, but I think they could handle that fine, and I think that would be the general mechanism to get to where animals can then live in the wild sustainably.
Mm. Um, Thank you. And I guess I want to pivot a little bit to our first talk. So I really appreciate, I mean, I have something else I kind of want to bring up if we have time, but I appreciate the work you were talking about on outer space research. I think usually when people think about research, they're thinking about vivisection, they're thinking about laboratories. And so I guess I'm asking both of you, Jack and Ramona, like what, say, areas of thought or insight do you think this focus on animals and outer space research kind of adds to this overall project of, you could say, animal liberation, or at least say theorizing the predicaments of animals?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think animals are kind of tested, unfortunately, around the world every day, all the time, for lots of different reasons. Um, Outer space, historically it was for test flight. That doesn't happen anymore because it doesn't need to happen. So the only kind of animal testing happening now is on kind of in space, so on space stations. So I don't think the public knows kind of much about that. I mean, I suppose they don't know much about kind of animal testing generally, although most people are generally aware that some of the products that they ban animals may have been used in those processes. But as far as the ISS is concerned, I think, or the International Space Station or space stations where animals are tested, the there's a kind of unknown, it must be for a good reason, otherwise they wouldn't do it. I just think that where space is concerned, the narrative is a bit different, but I think people's thought process is probably a little bit different as well in terms of probably not knowing as much, but also, because of the kind of craziness of actually thinking that animals are in space right now and being
Mm.
tested upon is maybe people just don't either know that or don't think about it as much. Yeah.
Mm. Ramona, would you like to add?
Well, what are we trying to contribute? I suppose it's because this area is, for the most part, removed from most people's awareness and interest. It feels arcane somehow, so it fits very well into how you chose to title our panel "Hidden Uses or
Mm.
Abuses." Um, and it's a learning exercise for us too. It's work in progress, and we're learning more and trying to share what we've learned and trying to counter the individualization of the victims, which is so pervasive when it comes to animal experimentation. And in general, animal abuse, they become mere numbers. And when it comes to the earlier question, I suppose we just need to acknowledge that two conflicting realities exist. On the one hand, sterilization is an invasive procedure. It's traumatizing physically and psychologically for the animal. But at the same time, animals suffer when they continue reproducing in a context that lacks the resources needed for a decent life, whether it's food, shelter, medical care. So I don't have the answer to to that ethically or practically. So probably the most honest answer is to recognize the tension between two equally valid realities: the need for population control on the one hand, and the abusive nature of the procedure.
Mm. No. I think we can admit that in a situation we regret either decision for different reasons, and unfortunately have to choose regardless, in some way. So there is another question I see in the Q&A. Eric Green asks, Josh Milburn's arguments are convoluted and anthropocentric. Aside from imagined benefits, uh, labor, feeding the world, and so on, there are individuals who like meat and refuse to be vegan or try vegan substitutes. This is the strongest argument for IVM. So I assume that means the strongest argument for IVM. This is like Bruce Friedrich's argument, right? That like people are going to eat meat. People are eating meat. Sure, I would love to be a world in which people are not eating meat, but in the meantime, are we going to be okay with people continuing to kill animals for meat? Why don't we at least give them what they want, right? This is the kind of Bruce's argument a bit. Um, Ethically, there should be no insistence to utilize animals in any way. How would you respond to this reality?
Uh, yep. So it's definitely Friedrich's argument, which is going to be the topic of a near future presentation of mine. But Josh makes the same one in the debate chapter with him, nearly word for word that Bruce has said earlier and others have said. Vasily Stanescu, who of course was a presenter here earlier, he has a great response to this in a chapter, also in an upcoming volume. But I have also addressed it indirectly, not specific, maybe instances of like Bruce or Josh, but essentially, I would say that giving people what they want is not a good strategy, um, in general, to change things. That's pretty much what you do if you don't want to change things. And to double down and to harp on this idea of meat, they're really just reifying that discourse. As they're saying, yep, that's okay. We will continue to do that and we'll figure out a way to do it. Now, I think one of the issues with giving them this, beyond what I said, is IVM. We have to create an entire industry from scratch. This is a ton of resources. It's a ton of time. This is decades in the making so far with almost nothing to show for it. That's a ton of resources, a ton of money, a ton of thought put into creating this, which is completely unnecessary. All of that could be put into better ideas, into better discourse, and it's not. So this is wasted time, wasted discourse, wasted resources. It's simply a waste of time. If people want to eat meat, that is, I think, too bad. That's for us to get over. That is a problem. Humans have to take some responsibility and accountability here. So that's where I would always put it. It's not on the animals. We do not get to eat their meat just because we want to. If things have to change, we have to change. The problems that exist are human problems. We cause them and we can fix them. And I think that's where the emphasis has to lie.
Great, thank you. And I just want to say we're going to have to move on, but from kind of where we started into now, I really find this kind of thread, whether it's using animals for outer space research or IVM or other activities that violate their sexual and reproductive rights, kind of also hinges. I wish we could have had a whole panel on just kind of the problem of using animal as a category at the beginning. And the reason that came up again, I was just reading, if you know, Sophie Lewis just wrote this piece in The Key on sexual violence in Palestine. And one part says, this is what it looks like when a society has settled the question of who counts as rapeable, which is to say, who counts as human. It also makes clear who has protection from sexual violence under the law and who has the government backing to commit it. So, I mean, I was thinking a lot about this, thinking about that, whether it's all of these forms in which we, in some way, are trying to assert protections for animals when the title animal itself has already made it impossible to give those protections, at least theoretically, right? The category itself precludes that ability, which is, I think, like the most important, unfortunate epistemic kind of situation of all, right? And so I really hope that the work that y'all are doing and others helps us kind of deconstruct, obviously, that normalization. Well, I just want to say thank you all for joining this panel. I know the time difference is tough for many of us here, but the international nature of this event is really wonderful and at least brings me a lot of joy. So thank you.